Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by Colin Wilson, and we're here to talk college baseball. We are so close to the postseason conference tournaments, then in the regionals, super regionals. Before you know it, we will be in Omaha covering the College World Series, top to bottom. And here on the Diamond, we could never do that without Colin Wilson because he is the absolute leading expert in the space. If you want to know about pitching matchups, probables, futures odds, as well as starting pitching matchups and wind, he's got every single thing covered. So I'm going to kick it to you first, Colin. What are you doing other than being in the weeds with college baseball? I know that we're post spring for college football. Do you have your eye on two things at once, or is your eye on the ball here with college baseball?
Well, my eyes are actually on three things at once. I'm doing daily MLB, but college baseball had done very well on the app, done very well for me. It has definitely been my primary focus, but college football just fired up. I mean, we're getting win totals out at some of the major books nationwide. G5 win totals are going up. Still waiting on conference championships. It's about time for game of the years. You can see, Brett is out tweeting about TV contracts and TV times about when these games are going to kick. You start to get the bug under your veins. And next thing you know, this morning, I'm sitting in my Kansas graveyard up at the tip of Missouri, Oklahoma, and Kansas, laying bets on Fresno over Rice. I'm trying to throw the rubber band back and throw bets with a comment in it on Rice at 7 o'clock in the morning. I've only had half a cup of coffee. So no, I am wearing two hats. But I'm really excited about the next 3.5 weeks for college baseball. We are in the prime of this, and I can't wait because this is we will talk about it once we get there, but the College World Series is very profitable if you play certain angles. So we'll get to that here in about 3 weeks.
So for those not initiated, Kansas Graveyard is not an expression. That's an actual place that you have to go to place your bets.
Yeah. There's downstream casino, and then you can't place bets on there because even though it's in Kansas, it's technically considered Oklahoma to the major books that are in Kansas, not Oklahoma and Missouri. So Oklahoma, Missouri, you can't bet there. You have to be in Kansas. So I drive up to downstream casino, and then I have to go to the back, like where catering is for a casino. And all these people are sitting there staring at me where there's a graveyard and catering's going by. And I stare at a graveyard with my laptop and my phone and just start shedding win total bets, and then I'm in there tweeting it. I'm putting it in the action app while I'm sitting in a graveyard. I mean, literally, it's the most unglorious thing I've ever seen. But the good news is you can cash out at the end of the season. You don't have to be in the graveyard. You can do that on your couch.
Next time you go, I'll have to give you my Washington Huskies national title ticket for football and Purdue for college hoops. You can drop that off in the graveyard. Close, but no cigar for me. All right. Let's jump back into college baseball. As I mentioned at the top, a lot of major events happening in the next 3 weeks. Let me give you a rundown. The selection show for the NCAA tournament field is on Monday, May 27th at noon on ESPN2. Then the round of 64-32, that's the equivalent for regionals. That's Friday through Monday, May 31st through June 3rd. Then the Sweet 16, which they refer to as the Super Regionals, that's Friday through Sunday, June 7th through the 9th, or Saturday through Monday, June 8th to the 10th. And then finally, you get into the College World Series itself, the final 8 teams. That starts Friday, June 14th, and they'll play that all the way down to the title game on June 22nd and 23rd. So those are the matchups. Those are the opportunities to see a field come together. It's also interesting. We'll get into it in our conversation. There's mocked and projected fields out there on the internet that you can take a look at right now. I think that certainly helps in terms of planning a bit because you're going to get these 4-team clusters. So it's not just who you are and what your ranking is. It's also very critical to understand that you're going to be the home team. You're going to have your home regional, and these are the teams that you're going to face off. So that path can be just as important as your personnel. All right. Last thing before we get into the show and our game of pepper, I want to throw this out. I was looking at some of the mocked brackets, and I want to give you 3. And I want to say, of these 3, which team do you think is most susceptible to being upset and knocked out of the tournament in the regionals on their home field? We got the Greenville Regional with ECU hosting. Do you think Duke can get it done? Corvallis out west with Oregon State hosting. Do you think a plucky underdog like UC Irvine could punch their ticket? And then finally, the other one that I thought was a little bit susceptible or ripe for an upset, the Stillwater Regional with either Mississippi State or Oregon upsetting the Pokes there in Stillwater. What are your thoughts?
Oh boy, there's 2 of them I don't think are going to make it through. So we'll go ahead and set ECU aside because when you have Trey Savage going for you on Friday nights, you get a leg up already. They have really struggled down the stretch. They're now in jeopardy of UTSA taking that conference title from them. They'll still make it on RPI, but still, I would say ECU is the safest one out of all that. I'm not even sure Oregon State's going to be a host. They have tripped and stumbled. And I tell you what, I bet Aiden May and Jacob K-Mats when they're at home, but man, when they're on the road, they're terrible. And this weekend, they're going to play Arizona for essentially the Pac-12. And so that's why I'm not even sure they're going to host. And even if they do, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be tough. But I think your third one is where the upsets are coming. Can you read that off to me again, Calabrese? Which one was it? The third
Sure.
one?
So we have Oklahoma State hosting their
Right.
regional in Stillwater, and at least by projections, Mississippi State and Oregon in that pod. Those two caught my eye as teams that potentially could get over the hump.
I think Mississippi State is excellent. I think they're worth a buy right now. I think they could make a run in the SEC tournament, even prop themselves up to a higher seed. They have a great pitching staff. They really gave Arkansas everything for their money in Fayetteville, which is tough to do. And Oklahoma State is nothing but get hot at the plate for 2 or 3 innings, zero bullpen. Oregon's a little bit of the same. The bullpen has really let them down this year, but Mississippi State's in a different category. I wish I could pronounce their pitcher that goes in game 2. I could never do. He's got 2 J's in his last name. He pitches with both his left and his right arm. I've been practicing his name, but I'll save it for the College World Series. But definitely Mississippi State in Stillwater, I think would be a great upset.
All right, this is the time of year when it's important to remind fans and listeners and casual bettors that what's more important is winning the regular season. The conference tournament is just that cherry on top. That's not helping you punch an automatic ticket. So if you could just run us through quickly, which teams already have their conferences locked up, which are in danger potentially of losing that regular season crown, and what are some critical matchups that you have your eye on this weekend?
Yeah, there are a handful of teams that have already won their conference's regular season title. I'm not betting them this weekend because they may be changing their rotation, maybe saving arms, maybe giving a bit of rest, maybe on a pitch count. So these are the teams I would not play this weekend, which is the final weekend of the regular season. The American East has Bryant as winner. ACC, North Carolina has it all wrapped up. No one can catch them. Same thing in the Big 12. Oklahoma's there. No one can catch them. And then real quick, in the Ivy, Columbia, Mac, Bowling Green, Missouri Valley, Indiana State. Indiana State is important. That's one that may go against this list because they are still really working to make sure they have a regional in Terre Haute, which is interesting because they earned it last year, but then what was it? The Children's Cancer Shriners Circus was in town and they had to go play in TCU, which started their run. So Indiana State is the one team I'd say they probably aren't going to lay off this weekend because they want that regional seed. But then again, Army and the Patriot, and then the Sun Belt, Louisiana, out in the West Coast, San Diego, and congrats to the Toreros and WAC, Grand Canyon. I will say one thing about the Sun Belt. You talked about some upsets coming on. I will guarantee you that one of the 3 or 4 Sun Belt teams that get in will upset the region they get in as a 2 or 3 host. The Sun Belt is stout this year.
You're talking about the SEC. Is there a team that you are in love with at this point? Because there's plenty of teams that you can poke holes in their resume, having talked to Arkansas and A&M. But is there a team that's rising to the top at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, I think this podcast is going to be littered with this team. But when I left, I went to a Royals Brewers series last week, and by the time I left, again, swept over the state of Kansas, I saw Georgia 55-1. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take that. And today, when I was up in my Kansas graveyard betting Rice and Fresno State win totals, I said, let's go take a look at that Georgia number. And it was 39-1 again. And I'm like, well, I got to take another shot at it. I think Georgia right now is the most complete team out there. They've identified, and here's the thing that bothers me is this was not the same team when they started SEC play back in March. Not the same team that started out at the beginning of April. Georgia is absolutely on fire. They've identified a Friday night pitcher, and the rest of their staff, which was going to be a bunch of throwaway bullpen guys, have actually turned into quality starts and quality saves out of the bullpen. Georgia is firing on all cylinders. Their offense looks like LSU from last year, and that's scary.
What are your thoughts on Big Blue Nation, Kentucky? At least you can also give me a bit of a history lesson. Is this outside of the norm for them to be this high in the rankings with expectations that are now moving beyond just, hey, get to regionals, maybe get to a super regional? At this point, is it get to the College World Series or bust?
I mean, that's the thing about it's funny was everybody makes jokes about Arkansas baseball around here. I live pretty close to campus, and the joke is everybody in the SEC West has a national title except Arkansas. That's true. And then when you look at Kentucky, they're kind of in the same boat. I mean, you're there with Vandy, and Tennessee's probably going to get to Omaha again. But Kentucky, the expectations have never been that high for this baseball team, but now they're number 1. And I think they are the perfect overall number 1 seed because we know the history. The overall number one seed hasn't won since 99. They haven't played in the championship series since 2009. And I think Kentucky's resume, it's good. You cannot go against 25-8 quad one, quad two record. You can't go with having the 10th best strength of schedule and you're number one in road RPI. But there's variance in these numbers. They caught Georgia mid-March when Georgia didn't know who they were. It's not the same Bulldogs team right now. They needed extra innings twice to beat Florida this past weekend. That Florida team that's dipped down to 60-1, that is in jeopardy of finishing sub 500. Kentucky needed 2 games in extra innings to win that. And then road series victories. Look at this. I mean, I just mentioned, you want to go through Tennessee, you want to go through Vandy. That's not what we have. Their road series were against Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn, South Carolina. I mean, there is a scenario where all 4 of those could miss the postseason. There's a scenario. South Carolina, likely not. But there's a scenario there. So, they lost a home series to Tennessee, and I think I tweeted out right there and there. It's just Kentucky does not have the gear offensively, 74th in homers per game. I think they are a perfect number one seed. Go ahead, get into the postseason, keep that trend going, because I just don't see the Wildcats winning it. And I will say this, I don't have a single penny, Calabrese. I don't have a single penny on Kentucky, and I won't have a single penny. Even if they make it into the championship round, maybe I'll hedge.
All right, we're going to go from the powerhouse SEC to an underdog that I referred to earlier, UC Irvine. Since April 19th, the Anteaters are 13-2 straight up. They won the season series against nationally ranked UC Santa Barbara, which is really their only opportunity in the last, we'll call it 10 weeks, to play up to a team that is likely to play in the NCAA tournament. They're top 10 in fielding percentage, 3rd in on-base percentage, and they're a veteran team. I really liked when I dug into this to see how much they had brought back from last year. So many regulars in their lineup, and it's paid off because they have 6 players hitting over 300, in their, 1 through 9. And then you have Nick Pinto, who's a veteran ace. He's pitched in 1 million games, but really freshman Trevor Hansen has been the new addition to their rotation and helped them achieve new heights. He got banged around early, as freshmen are wont to do, but he's been really solid in his last 3 appearances, striking out 13 in his last 12 innings of work. What are your thoughts on the Anteaters, particularly if they get paired up with some of these paper tigers out west? Whoever ends up winning the Pac-12, you alluded to it earlier, we really shouldn't be scared of that champion.
They're a dangerous, dangerous team if they make it to Omaha. And the reason is they're 160th in homers per game, but it doesn't matter. TD Ameritrade zaps all that out from you. They are an on-base team. They're 3rd in the nation on-base percentage, which means they can slap it around the park and get guys on. And those are the teams that usually cause a lot of problems in Omaha. What's really going to go bad is if they do draw a region that, and I'm glad Stanford's on it. Like every ball flies out of the sunken diamond, like it's like there's no tomorrow. They need paper tigers to get matched up with in the regionals and the super regionals, because right now, their strength of schedule is 103rd, but their road RPI is 3rd. So they've played some good teams on the road, and they are better than UC Santa Barbara. I know UC Santa Barbara is going to win the Big West out there, but UC Irvine is the better team. I don't think it's a bad idea to grab a future on them, but I'm personally waiting until I see who they get drawn up with. If they have to go to Oregon State, that could be a problem. If they have to go play Arizona, I think that's a little bit easier. I think playing Oregon is a little bit easier. I wouldn't want to send anybody to Corvallis with a futures ticket there, but UC Irvine is a dangerous club. And if they make it to Omaha, it's not like we're just going to sweep them under the rug and say, this is a team that can be beat. This team is great, and they have a great road RPI, and they fit the dimensions of TD Ameritrade.
All right, as we played 2 weeks ago, we're back to this would you rather game. We're going to give you 2 matchups at a time. You go ahead and tell me how you would play it, either, playing the opener or the series price itself. So you have Georgia against Florida, and then Tennessee against South Carolina in SEC play.
Yeah, Georgia should be minus 340, minus 440, minus 280. That comes to a series price of minus 675. Florida's pesky. Pierce Koppel has been better than advertised on Friday nights for a guy that's kind of just been thrown into the leadoff role. And I don't know why Jack Caglione is not pitching on Friday nights, but I mean, usually they're good on Sundays of sweeping up that game. Florida is, but at this point, Georgia is so on fire right now. If the books post anything less than minus 340 on Colton, on Friday night, then it's absolutely going to be an auto play. Georgia's turning into an auto play every week because I don't think the books have caught up to how good they are.
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick shout out to Caglione. 30-game hit streak. which is incredible. I think this now moves him solidly into the best ball player in Gators history. Move over Brad Wilkerson. I think Caglione is the top dog when it comes to Florida hitters, pitchers. He does both, so it's convenient. But I think in general, this team, they are pesky, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. 6 straight series losses in SEC play. I can't think of a number south of 10-1 that would interest me. And as you mentioned, it's probably going to fall in that closest, minus 700 range. So I still think there's value on Georgia as well. All
But
right,
we
going
do
to throw. Sorry, go
we
ahead.
do get a future look at an MLB All-Star Derby with Jack Caglione and Charlie Condon hitting homers against each other. So Condon actually has a 6 home run lead over Caglione to lead the nation. So you're going to see a lot of power in that Georgia-Florida series.
We'll stay in the Southeastern Conference. Kentucky Vandy or A&M Arkansas that we already talked about at the top.
Oh, well, we're going to take Kentucky at home. They've been fantastic. Vandy is on the ropes. They are struggling. They need this series badly, but it's just not been there. The offense hasn't been there. The pitching hasn't been there. And sadly, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm going to go with Texas A&M this weekend. The pitching has not been good for Arkansas on the third day, especially with Mason Molina. He has been out before the fourth inning, a couple starts in a row. Brady Tigert is really struggling with command on the second outing, the Saturday outing generally. Our bullpen has come in to save it, but at the same time, Texas A&M is at home, just like Arkansas. These SEC teams, when they're at home, they're generally elite and tough to beat. I see Hagen Smith, the best pitcher in the nation, on Thursday night against Texas A&M on the road. I see him as a plus 150 dog. Like, I'm going to end up betting Hagen Smith against Ryan Prager just, at that number. Like, you're betting Hagen Smith at plus money. Like, you're just doing that blindly, no matter who they're going up against. But I'm telling you, from a numbers perspective, A&M should be favored minus 170 on the first game, which I believe is Thursday night. So I'm going to go with Texas A&M in the series, and it kills me to say that.
College football, public versus non-public teams, very much alive and well. You pay a premium for the Alabamas and the Notre Dames and the USCs of the world. Do you think there's a reverse factor going on in that Kentucky Vandy series? Like, why is Kentucky less than minus 200 in a series? As you point out, Vandy's not playing their best baseball right now.
Well, Kentucky's not attractive whatsoever. You watch them play, like, it's kind of dink and dunk offense, kind of station to station base running. Like, it's not a real exciting offense, but at the same time, they have really great pitching right now. That's what's kept their head afloat. Their offense has been better as of late, in comparison to Vandy, in comparison to Arkansas, but it's just, they're not a pretty watch. And maybe that has to do with it. But then again, the pedigree of Vanderbilt. We're a couple of years removed from being in the College World Series with Kumar Rocker. The Vandy boys are always there. And when you get a constant, Buster Olney, Vandy boys tweets going out like every 5 days, it reinforces bettors thinking that Vanderbilt is the better team. And in this case, they're not.
All right, let's transition over to the ACC, two-pack of games here. Duke, North Carolina. North Carolina surging, arguably playing the best baseball in the ACC in the last 6 weeks. And then Wake against NC State. Either of those jump out to you?
Duke will pop off to me if I don't see DeCaro and Sprague starting for North Carolina. I don't know when North Carolina, because they've already wrapped up the ACC. Not sure how serious they're going to take the conference tournament, but I think we'll get an indication of how serious they feel about it when we see the pitching rotation for this weekend. They may hold DeCaro and Sprague back. So Duke can absolutely take that series. They need to take that series. Things have been a little bit harder for them than I would have expected them to be. Okay, so Wake is going to be one of the very few heavy favorites on the road this weekend. They're going to be minus 280 when Chase Burns takes the mound, minus 180 on their second game, and then minus 140 when a brand new revived Josh Hartle is going to take the mound, who is back to being what we thought was going to be the best pitcher in the nation. Well, he's now supplying all that hype for Wake Forest in their third game. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go on the road to NC State, take this series. They could even sweep it. This team now has a chip on their shoulder, and they were the preseason #1, and they're finally playing like it. Like our first podcast calibers, I talked about how they've just been completely unlucky. Their FIPS and their XFIPS are a run and a half higher than their ERAs. Like, it's all going to come back. I would bet Wake Forest here. I project them minus 270 for the series against NC State. I'd take anything at that or lower.
All right, these next matchups, one in the Pac-12, one in the Big Ten. I'm very interested in talking about the Pac-12 matchup. Oregon State against Arizona. You mentioned it at the top, a critical, matchup for the regular season title, but the alarms are going off for me. Oregon State on the road. They are garbage. They are outside of the top 100 in terms of their road RPI, and it's appropriate that they wear orange and black because their pitching staff turns into absolute pumpkins on the road, particularly Jacob Komatz. He got shelled in his last road start. He gave up 8 hits and 5 runs to Washington State, who's nothing to write home about. So I am very much interested in the Wildcats in this matchup. Oregon State is clearly a team that it's pivotal for them to be hosting a regional because they play their best baseball in Corvallis. So is there anything I'm missing there, or is this just an auto play because the Beavers really struggle on the road?
Well, they do struggle on the road, but at the same time, I project them as a small favorite in all 3 games, -160 and then -130 and -130 for the other 2 games. So I make the series price -160. So if you're going to if you want to take Arizona, which I don't think is a bad bet this weekend, playing at home for the Pac-12, and Oregon State has just been night and day different away from Corvallis. Look for a price of +140 or better. If you see anything like that, Arizona is going to be it. It's actually a very interesting weekend in the Pac-12 because they're, teams like Utah, Cal, they need big weekends to step up here. But Arizona can win the Pac-12, and I think I'm saying this with a tear in my eye because this is it. Next week we have a Pac-12 tournament, and then I don't know, Calabrese, like you and I are in this pool where we discuss every sport in the world. Like I know there's other Division I stuff going on, and there will be a couple things going on in July and August, but this is it for the Pac-12. Goodbye. Happy trails. I mean, this is for the championship this weekend. So kind of sad, but yes, I would take Arizona +140 or better in that series.
Yeah, last team out of the Pac-12 tournament. Turn off the lights on your way out. All right, Big Ten discussion here. It's been a couple years talking college baseball with you. It's been a distinct pleasure for me. We have not talked Big Ten baseball very much. So tell me, are we missing anything, or did we skip by it on purpose and that was probably for the best?
I really don't want to hurt. I mean, Big Ten is such a big part of BBOC, right? I can't be disparaging the Big Ten, but they all know. Like I have family who went to Nebraska. They all know. But no, Illinois is going to be on the road going up against Purdue this weekend. Purdue is going to be a big favorite. I've got them -210, -155, and -160. Illinois has a 1-game lead in the Big Ten, and there's about 4 teams that can grab that title, including Nebraska here this weekend. So really big weekend in the Big Ten. The problem with Big Ten baseball is they just don't attract the talent and they don't play as big of a schedule as the teams in the South. And I know this may be unbelievable if you're new to college baseball, but the Sun Belt is quickly on their way to being a better league overall front to back than the Big Ten when it comes to baseball. So I'm going to say Purdue wins this series. Illinois does not win the Big Ten. I have no clue who to put money on. Like if you want to have a future bet on Nebraska, Illinois, Purdue, I think Nebraska has the better pitching of all 3 of those teams. I think Nebraska can have the better pop. There's really some things in Illinois' numbers that are paper tiger from an ERA, a road RPI of 180. They're not going to win a single game once they get away from home, which is this weekend at Purdue. So I'll leave it there. The Big Ten it's tough because besides Michigan in 2019, there just really is no Big Ten representation in the postseason.
All right, going from the Big Ten back to the big time. Let's talk about some aces that you're excited to back this weekend.
Oh yeah, I think we've already started to mention them. I'm going to go Colton Smith, sophomore at Georgia. He could pitch any night. He has pitched any night. He was going Sunday, Saturday. I saw him on a Thursday. I saw him on a Tuesday. Recently on a Thursday against South Carolina. He was the 3rd starter against Texas A&M. He pitched on a Tuesday against Clemson in late April. Colton Smith is the go-to guy for Georgia pitching right now, and he is pitching elite. He is 13th nationally in strikeouts per 9 at 13.8, and he hasn't given up more than 3 earned runs in a game since March 30th. This goes back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. This Georgia team, throw their numbers from April 7th-ish before, throw it away. This team is on fire right now. 6 total earned runs for Colton Smith over his last 9 appearances. That's 31.2 innings of 6 earned runs. That's the pitcher I'm backing from here until we get to the end of this season.
I know I'm late to the North Carolina party, but they've been red hot, so I want a piece of them. If the right starters get named, I'm glad that you brought that up. But if Shea Sprague goes, their junior lefty is one of the best pitchers in the ACC. If he's on the bump on Saturday, it's likely going to be around a coin flip. But additionally, even if he does not start, I'm still interested in potentially playing the Tar Heels or looking at them on a live number if I can get it, because I love their bullpen. Matthias has been one of the best relievers in all of baseball, and he really gives Scott Forbes a multi-dimensional element out of his bullpen. He can get tough outs, come in, for 1 or 2 outs in situational moments, but he can also go 2 or 3 innings if he has a starter that can barely get out of the fourth inning. So I think, him being able to be used like a chess piece all over the board is really helpful for the Tar Heels. And this staff as a whole has given up the fewest extra base hits in the ACC by a wide margin. So I think that's something to consider when you're looking at them potentially putting together a bullpen start for an entire game. And Duke's really not playing their best baseball at this point. They're stumbling into the ACC tournament, and they're absolutely beatable at home. A home record of 21-8 for a team with as much upside as the Blue Devils, I think, is a bit troubling. Jack Coombs Field is not a house of horrors for opposing teams. So I think North Carolina, if you can get them close to even money with a guy like Sprague on the bump, I think that's a play I'm interested in.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'll round us out on the pitchers here with somebody from Dallas Baptist, who we have not talked about this year. Dallas Baptist almost always seems to be in a regional, and I always seem to have a bet on them, and they don't make it to Omaha. So, but I am going to bet on Ryan Johnson. He's their junior hurler. He's third nationally in strikeout to walk ratio. Dallas Baptist is 11-2 in games that Ryan Johnson starts. He is always, you don't have to look for him or what day it is. He is always their initial game starter. He's allowed 2 earned runs in his last 3 starts, covering 21 innings pitched. Ryan Johnson is a play on this weekend, play on a conference tournament. Even if UTSA wins this conference tournament, Dallas Baptist is still in regionals, and we are still betting on Ryan Johnson.
All right, let's close it out with, in addition to our futures portfolio, I've also been sharing it on my social media. Colin's always very active on Twitter, X as well, so be sure to follow both of us. I have Duke at 19-1, and I have Tennessee. I was able to grab them at one of the last 11-1 numbers out there, but I have a long shot to add. Where are you going with your pick here, Colin?
Well, I mean, I talked about it at the beginning of the show about a couple of weeks now. I've taken a Georgia 55-1. I took them today at 39-1, and that's at a very prominent national book. So I know that's out there. But I've seen them as low as 25-1. If you can get over 30-1, I'd say Georgia to win it all could be a bet. But instead, I'm going to go with, if you have this available at your book, which I have a couple that do, to make Omaha as a prop, Georgia plus 225. 8 straight victories over South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and the tail end of the Texas A&M series. They are proving it against good teams. And despite sitting around 75th in the team in ERA and WHIP, Colton Smith, like I said, provides a game 1 ace. And Charlie Condon, if you don't know who this is, if you haven't seen the highlights, he's coming to a Major League Baseball team real soon to knock about 25 to 35 homers per year. Right now he has 34 homers, 72 RBIs, and 50 games played. He has 34 home runs in 50 games. He's up to 22 intentional walks, which is really interesting because Corey Collins leads the nation in OBP that bats before him. And so you're intentionally walking him even with guys on. That's how good Charlie Condon is right now. So Georgia has everything right now. Take them plus 225 to make Omaha.
So as of right now, in one of the projections from Baseball America, the Athens Regional with Georgia hosting, they would have Southern Miss, Georgia Tech, and Bryant. Scared at all of any of those teams?
0. No, that's a sweat-free weekend.
All right, that's fantastic. That's what I was hoping you would say there. All right, let us close it up with my addition here. I like the Anteaters, UC Irvine, 45-1 to win it all. And you stole my thunder a little bit, but actually it makes me feel good because you validated a feeling that I had, which is if they can somehow get to Omaha, then I think their brand of baseball works in their favor. They also, if they can either pull Oregon State or Arizona out west, I think there's a chance for them to pull that upset. 45-1, I think, is a great price. As I mentioned, they have a veteran ace in Pinto, lots of plus bats in this lineup, and they're playing their best baseball right now. I want a team that's on the upswing, that has confidence, and with such a weak, crop of teams out west, I think, from a personnel standpoint, you can make an argument that they are, one of the most trustworthy teams, but also just from a motivational standpoint, they could put on the banner for the whole American West and say, we're the best team out here. So why not us? As opposed to years when you've had some, powerful teams in the Pac-12. That's just not the case this time around. I like the Anteaters. What do you think about the price? Is there a threshold that you would get in and involved with UCI?
Well, at this point in the season, 64 teams are going to get announced. Really only half of those have real aspirations of making it to Omaha, and UC Irvine is one of them. So I would say if you can get 35-1 or better, then you're really sitting in a good position. The one thing I worry about with UC Irvine, I think they could go to Corvallis and win. I think they could go down to Tucson and win. There's a lot of places on the western part of the United States I think they could win. But the problem is if UC Santa Barbara wins the Big West, which they probably will, do they give them the number 2 seed in Corvallis or down in Tucson and send UC Irvine to a place like Oklahoma? And that would be disaster for the ticket. I think if they can avoid a team that is not a paper tiger, if they can avoid like an Oklahoma or get saddled with Oregon State, Arizona, or Oklahoma State, you're sitting pretty.
Yeah, to your point, in the latest projection, they have UC Santa Barbara taking the last regional. So the 16 seed there hosting Arizona, South Carolina, and Fresno State. That is a big difference for UC Irvine. So a lot of things can change. Obviously, there's still time. There's still jockeying for position. And as I mentioned, the selection show for the NCAA tournament is on Monday, May 27th. And a bit of housekeeping for us. We're going to be back every single week all the way through the national championship. So we're here to hold your hand, to give you as many futures tickets as possible, to give you plenty of outs leading up to Omaha. So next week we're going to be back. It's going to be a bit in the middle of conference tournament time. So you can probably count on an episode about half as long. We're just going to get into 2 to 3 futures that we like and overall comments on some teams and their overall momentum. And as Colin brings up, it's really important to get a lay of the land because these teams aren't always the same as they were 2 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago or 3 months ago. There's a lot of momentum and also health that you need to keep an eye on. Some of these rotations get healthier or they get guys banged up. Those are things to consider as you're placing these futures bets because the information for college baseball, we lament it in college football and college basketball. It can be just as difficult and prickly trying to get clear, concise information out of these, managers and everyone that needs to, bring things to the forefront so you know if you're playing with a full deck or not. So we're going to do our best to give you all of that information starting next week. And as I mentioned, we're going to be here every single week here on BBOC. For Colin Wilson, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Big Bets on Campus podcast.